Hey guys, as we continue our series on structuring deals, we're going to talk today about one of the toughest, most important parts of the transaction, the working capital. We know this topic can be confusing, so please feel free to reach out to us for any questions. We hope you enjoy the show.
This may be the most overcomplicated and misunderstood part of any deal, right? Working capital can be generally calculated by adding cash, receivables, and inventory and subtracting payables and other accrued liabilities like payroll. It gets more complex, but technically it is what produces the cash flow to operate the business and pay off debt every day, right?
Right. I mean, when you buy a car, you would generally assume there's enough gas to get the gas station or an average remaining tread life on the tires. If these were not the case, then you would have to pay for a tow truck to take you to the gas station, right? Mm-hmm. And possibly new tires on day one of owning the car. I would hope to pay less for that car if that was the case, right? If I had to buy the gas and new tires. And when buying a business, it's very similar. The gas and the tires represent the working capital of the business. There's a level of working capital you would expect when buying a business as part of the purchase price that allows you to drive the business without having to immediately infuse more capital beyond the purchase price, right? In other words, if the sale of the business includes all the assets used in the business, including a level of working capital that allows the continued operation of that business, then we know the price is correct. To the extent this is lacking, the price should be less. To the extent that there's more than enough, then you would be willing to pay more. Right? Mm-hmm. See also brand new tires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this level of working capital is what we call a working capital peg. It's a point of negotiation on every deal that we do. Mm-hmm. And so Grant, tell us some things that you've seen, to get to a working capital peg.
Yeah, we've seen pegs that are many millions of dollars and some very low because in those cases the business generates enough cash daily to cover all the expenses from day one. Negotiating an acceptable peg is done early in the process because it directly affects the price and therefore what you take home as a seller. Buyers generally study the average historical levels of working capital in the business and start that negotiation right at that point, right? However, most of our clients have excess working capital. They manage. They don't want to manage cash on a weekly basis, so they leave a bunch of cash in there. They have high levels of inventory because they take advantage of cheaper bulk purchases, right? Mm-hmm.
So there is a more correct way to calculate the peg or required working capital, and so which may also be we may be biased in representing sellers, right, more often, but tell us what that actually looks like.
Right. If you take the total amount of revenue and you divide that by what the balance in accounts receivable is, that tells you the number of times per year that receivables turn, right? And then we divide 12 months by that amount, and that'll tell us how many months of average expenses we need to be able to cover before we start getting the money from those accounts receivable, right? So we take the total expenses, including cost of sales, and we times it by the average monthly times that factor, and we get the amount that I'm going to need generally. And so that's our starting point, right? There are seasonalities and long-term contracts and things that change that. Sometimes, the peg includes a minimum amount of cash, for example, but most of the time deals are cash-free, debt-free.
So now that we know that we know more of how that peg is calculated, how does that reconcile with the actual amount of working capital in the business at the day of closing?
Yeah, when the deal closes, we do an estimate of what working capital is there. You can't get it exact. In some cases, the excess of over the peg is actually paid to the seller at closing. But whether it is or not, an accurate accounting is done by the buyer over the first 60 days, let's say, of owning the business, and he presents that to the seller, and they have maybe 30 days to argue about it and come to the right number. And that's when there is a true-up or a payment that is made to the seller for any excess. And sometimes the seller has to pay the buyer back for any shortfall.
So can you just let the seller keep all the cash, receivables, and pay all the bills until closing?
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong if you do that. And this is the whole reason why we do this. What happens if the seller just doesn't pay his bills for a while or hurries up the collection of the accounts receivable? If you have sold the business, you don't care about those relationships, you care about your money. Whereas if you own the business, you want those relationships to keep going. So you don't want to have the seller hard collect on those receivables. And so it produces some really kind of bad consequences.
Yeah. And making this fair is the purpose of the PEG, right? It protects both parties and is worth putting in place to reduce unknowns and take some of the stress out of the closing process.
That's right. Having the help of experienced M&A advisors with an accounting background, I'm going to say that, but helps significantly in this process. Avoiding surprises in the calculation of things like accrued PTO for employees and other items, which sometimes bite everybody at the end. It helps you script the outcome, which is exactly what reduces the stress. Negotiating what a fair PEG is takes a thorough understanding of accounting and unique financial processes inside of every business.
Yeah, we understand our clients are not totally familiar with this process, so we help them and their staff prepare, review, and execute this process because we know it protects them and the successor, right? And I'll say it again, this is not a one-size-fits-all, right? Navigating through a transaction, being able to script outcomes and avoid surprises is the purpose of our proven processes, right? So come sit at our table and let's figure it out together. Hey, thanks for joining Grant, Dave, and the rest of our team today. My name is Andrew, and I'm with the business development side of ICCG. If you have any questions or want to talk to somebody on our team, please visit our website, follow the directions there. I'll most likely be the one to respond, so look forward to hearing from you. Before you go, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.